Have you ever felt like life is just, this relentless series of tasks?
Oh, absolutely. Wake up, check the phone, commute, work.
Right, exactly. You come home, and it's so easy to just fall into this trap, this feeling like you're just a mind trapped inside a skull.
Like you're just looking out through your eyes at this world of completely meaningless objects.
Yeah, objects that you just occasionally bump into or, I don't know, use. You feel completely separate from the universe around you.
Isolated, really.
But what if that entire way of looking at your life, that fundamental separation between, you and the world, is a complete illusion?
That is a massive question.
It is. And more importantly, what if unlearning that illusion is the actual key to finally understanding who you really are, like when all the daily distractions are just stripped away?
I mean, it's a huge proposition to wrap your head around. To even begin to approach that idea, we basically have to dismantle hundreds of years of ingrained assumptions.
Assumptions about what it actually means to exist.
Yeah, exactly. We have to completely rewire how we perceive our own daily reality.
Which is exactly what we are going to attempt today on this deep dive.
Yeah.
We are taking on a piece of writing that is famously dense.
It's very dense.
Completely intimidating, and undeniably one of the most influential works of philosophy of the 20th century.
We're talking about Martin Heidegger's Being and Time.
Right. Originally published in 1927. And look, I know the reputation this book has.
It's a heavy, scholarly mountain.
It really is.
Okay.
But our mission today is to translate this intense material into accessible, genuinely mind-expanding realizations for you.
We want to show you how these radical ideas about existence and society and time apply directly to the life you are living right this very second.
It's essentially a shortcut to profoundly understanding the mechanics of human experience.
And, we aren't just flying blind here. We are using the factual framework from William Blattner's phenomenal book.
Oh yeah, Heidegger's Being in Time, a reader's guide. The 2024 second edition, to be exact.
Blattner does something incredibly rare in the world of academic philosophy.
He actually makes it make sense.
Yeah. He takes Heidegger's notoriously difficult, hyphenated German terminology and translates it into vivid, everyday phenomena.
He makes the abstract highly tangible. But before we can even open the book, we really need to talk about the man who wrote it.
We absolutely do.
Because we need to understand the turbulent and, frankly, deeply controversial historical ground from which this text sprang.
Heidegger's journey to writing Being and Time is actually pretty improbable.
Yeah, he wasn't born into some elite philosophical dynasty, was he?
Not at all, no. He was born in 1889 in this small rural town in the Baden region of Germany.
Very traditional, right?
Super traditional, Catholic environment.
Yeah.
In fact, his early education was entirely supported by the church.
Wow, okay.
His initial ambition in life wasn't to become a philosopher at all. He was aiming for the priesthood.
He actually wanted to be a Jesuit.
Right, he tried to join the Jesuit order, but he was dismissed because of a heart ailment.
Oh, wow. And I think that same heart condition is what kept him off the front lines during the First World War, wasn't it?
Exactly. So, derailed from the priesthood and the military, he pivots.
He studies mathematics, theology, and eventually finds his way into philosophy.
And this is where he encounters three massive intellectual streams that completely shape his worldview.
Okay, let's break those down. The first one is phenomenology, right?
Yes, phenomenology, which was championed largely by Edmund Husserl.
And Heidegger actually worked as Husserl's assistant for a time, didn't he?
He did. Now, Husserl's entire method was a radical departure from traditional science.
How so?
Well, he argued that we need to look at our pure consciousness of the world rather than trying to measure the physical world itself.
Interesting.
He introduced a crucial concept called the phenomenological epoche.
Epoche. That's a Greek term, right?
Yeah, it basically means a suspension of judgment.
Let's slow down on that because it feels foundational. What does it actually mean to suspend judgment in that way?
Essentially, you bracket or put out of play all your prior assumptions about reality.
So ignore the physics textbook.
Exactly. You ignore the laws of physics, psychological theories, religious metaphysics.
You just describe objects exactly as they show themselves to you in your direct lived experience.
Precisely.
Okay, so if I'm looking at the smartphone sitting on the desk in front of me, traditional science wants to talk about lithium-ion batteries and radio waves.
They're microchips. Yeah.
But Husserl is saying hit pause on all of that.
Right, because the phenomenological experience of the phone isn't a collection of rare earth metals.
The experience is that it is like a glowing portal of social connection.
Or a source of workplace anxiety.
Yeah, or just a tool for distraction. That is how it actually shows up to me.
Exactly. You are describing the phenomenon as it presents itself to your consciousness, not as a textbook tells you it exists structurally.
Okay, I get that. So what's the second influence?
Well, Heidegger takes Husserl's method and mixes it with the ideas of Immanuel Kant.
Kant, the transcendental logic guy.
Right. Kant wasn't just interested in the objects we experience.
What was he after?
He was interested in the underlying rules of thought that make it possible to experience anything at all.
So the hidden architecture.
Yeah. Kant argued that to even think about a world of objects, our minds have to follow certain structural rules.
Like organizing things into space and time.
Exactly, or cause and effect.
So Husserl gives Heidegger the method describing pure experience.
And Kant gives him the ambition to find the hidden structural rules of that experience.
Well, there's a third ingredient, right?
Yeah.
And this one feels, I don't know, the most relatable?
Existentialism.
Yes. Specifically, the profound, often unsettling works of Søren Kierkegaard and Friedrich Nietzsche.
Right. These thinkers reacted violently against the idea that human life is just some abstract academic cognitive exercise.
They looked at the messy, gritty reality of everyday life and saw it as a sort of comfortable sham.
They really did.
Yeah.
They believed our daily routines are often just covering up a more distressing but ultimately liberating underlying truth.
The truth about human freedom and human anxiety.
Yes. So Heidegger takes Husserl's descriptive method, Kant's search for hidden rules, and the existentialist obsession with the raw reality of living and dying.
And he fuses them all together.
He does.
But, as we start talking about Heidegger's legacy, we absolutely cannot ignore the massive dark shadow hanging over it.
No, we can't. We have to talk about the political controversy because it is severe.
It's a dark, inescapable fact of history. In 1933, Martin Heidegger officially joined the Nazi Party.
He did. He became the rector, essentially the president, of Freiburg University under the Nazi regime.
And he didn't just quietly hold the post, right? Like, he actively implemented parts of the Nazi program.
He actively aligned the university with the regime's ideology.
That is just so heavy.
It is. Now, he stepped down from the position of rector after about a year.
But the controversy surrounding his politics has never gone away.
If anything, it deepened significantly in recent years.
Right, with the publication of his Black Notebooks.
As Blattner points out in the guide, these notebooks, which were published in 2014, provide blatant, undeniable evidence of Heidegger's racism and anti-Semitism.
Yeah, Dieter Thome, a prominent Heidegger scholar, noted that with the release of these notebooks, anti-Semitism essentially entered the innermost core of Heidegger's philosophical reflection for the very first time in the public eye.
This forces a massive, uncomfortable debate in the philosophical community, which Blattner navigates in the source text.
The core question really is, did Heidegger use his highly abstract philosophical concepts from being and time to actively support an authoritarian, expansionist Nazi program?
Because there are scholars who look at his seminars from 1933 to 1935 and point out that he explicitly endorsed the Führer principle.
The Führer principle being the fascistic idea that the state embodies the being of the people, right?
Right, and that the true destiny of the nation is achieved only through absolute obedience to the will of the leader.
The Führer, which is unequivocally totalitarian.
But Blattner presents a profound and unavoidable tension here.
What's the tension?
Blattner argues that if you actually read the text of Being and Time, core elements of the philosophy seem to directly conflict with Nazi ideology.
How so? Because, the timeline is tricky. Being in Time was published in 1927, years before he joined the party.
Right. The contradiction lies in the concepts of individual answerability and authenticity.
Okay, unpack that for me.
Being in Time is essentially a manifesto against blindly following the crowd. It demands that you take personal, individual ownership of your life.
And the Führer principle, by definition, robs the individual of the authority to own their life.
Exactly. It demands subservience to a collective will.
So Blattner points out that Heidegger's own philosophical framework in 1927 condemns the kind of blind obedience he himself seemed to advocate in 1933.
It's a staggering contradiction.
This brings up the ultimate separating the art from the artist dilemma, but on a much more profound level than, canceling a pop musician.
Much more profound.
Can we extract a pure, objective understanding of human existence from someone so deeply compromised morally and politically?
Now, we are not here to take a side, to condemn the book, or to apologize for the man.
No, absolutely not. We are strictly reporting the debate as it exists in our source material. But it forces you, the listener, to sit with a very uncomfortable paradox.
You have an undeniably profound thinker who had horrific political affiliations.
It frames our entire exploration of his work. It turns reading, being, and time into an exercise in rigorous critical thinking.
We can't just passively absorb his ideas. We have to constantly ask ourselves if philosophy can ever truly be detached from the philosopher's actual lived life.
We have to remain vigilant as we step into his ontology.
Vigilance is the perfect word.
So, keeping that vigilance in mind, let's step into that ontology. Let's look at the core premise of the book, which requires us to unlearn basically everything we've been taught about reality.
Heidegger starts with what he famously calls the question of being, or the Seinsfrage.
Now, when I hear the question of being, I just assume he's asking what things exist.
Right, like a catalog of the universe.
Yeah, like, do black holes exist? Do microwaves exist? Does a soul exist?
That is exactly the misunderstanding he is trying to correct. He is not asking what entities are out there in the universe.
Because that is the job of physicists, biologists, or theologians.
Exactly. Heidegger is asking a prior, much more fundamental question.
Which is?
What is it to be? What are the underlying structural conditions that allow us to even understand a black hole, or a microwave, or a table as an entity in the first place?
And to answer that, he realizes he has to attack the dominant paradigm of Western philosophy.
A paradigm that has ruled since René Descartes in the 1600s.
He attacks the subject-object model of human experience.
The subject-object model is so ingrained in us that we barely even realize it's a theory. We just assume it's reality.
So what is the idea exactly?
The idea is that you are a subject. You are a mind, a localized consciousness, locked inside the physical vault of your skull.
And you are looking out, almost like peering through the windows of your eyes, at a completely separate world made up of objects.
It's the ultimate feeling of isolation.
It's like you're wearing a VR headset.
That is a perfect analogy.
Right. The real world is out there, separate from you, and your sensory organs are just feeding raw data into your brain.
And your brain is desperately trying to decode the data to build a picture of the outside world.
Heidegger looks at that VR headset model and says, that is phenomenologically false.
It does not accurately describe human life.
It only describes our experience in very rare specific moments.
Like when things violently break down, or when we adopt a highly detached, cold, scientific attitude.
But most of the time, that vast gulf between your mind and the world simply does not exist.
Right. Think about when you're deeply engrossed in a conversation.
Or when you are driving a familiar route home.
You aren't a detached mind calculating the trajectory of a steering wheel across a chasm of empty space.
You are just driving.
Yeah.
You're practically immersed in the activity.
Because of this, Heidegger refuses to even use the words person, human being, or subject.
Because those terms carry all that old Cartesian baggage of the isolated mind.
Exactly. So he coins a new term for us, Dasein.
Dasein. In ordinary German, I understand it just means something like existence or presence.
Yes, but Heidegger elevates it to a strict technical term for the specific entity that each of us is.
Literally translated, it means being there.
And he draws a massive, impenetrable line between the being of Dasein and the being of what he calls categorical entities.
Categorical entities being things like rocks or chairs or planets.
Right.
So what is the difference? I mean, a rock exists, I exist, we both take up space.
The difference is care. A rock just is.
It doesn't care that it's a rock.
Exactly. If you smash a rock into dust, the rock doesn't mind. Its being is a matter of total indifference to it.
But for Dasein, for you and me, our being is an issue for us.
We care about our lives. Blattner uses a brilliant phrasing here.
What's the phrasing?
He says Dasein's essence doesn't lie in a list of physical properties. Its essence lies in its to be, its Zusein.
We are a life that we are called to live.
That distinction changes everything. Because a rock's identity is decided. It is granite.
But my identity isn't decided by my physical makeup. Because my being is an issue for me, I'm constantly forced to answer the question of who I am through my actions.
You project yourself into possibilities.
Am I going to be a good friend today? Am I going to be a lazy employee? I have to literally do my identity.
And you do this not in a vacuum, but embedded in a highly specific context.
Which leads to another of Heidegger's famous concepts, being in the world.
Now, when we say being in the world, the word in is doing a lot of heavy lifting.
Yeah, Blattner makes a point to clarify that Heidegger does not mean physical insideness.
He doesn't mean like water is in a glass or a pair of shoes is in a closet.
Because that spatial insideness applies to objects, The water doesn't experience the glass as its glass.
For Dasein, being in means familiarity, residing, and dwelling.
It's in the way you are in love, or in the military, or in the zone.
It means you are fully absorbed in a meaningful context.
I think of a really skilled dancer who is completely one with the music.
That's a great visual.
The dancer isn't thinking. Move left foot forward 12 inches. Shift center of gravity.
There is no separation between the dancer's intention and the physical space of the dance floor.
They're just flowing. They're being in the dance.
And if we follow the logical conclusion of being in the world, it solves one of the biggest headaches in the history of philosophy.
Oh, epistemological skepticism.
Yes.
You mean the classic brain in a vat problem? The fear that maybe nothing around me is real, and it's all just a simulation, and I can't prove the external world exists?
Exactly. Skepticism assumes you are an isolated subject that has to somehow build a logical bridge to the outside world to prove it is there.
But Heidegger argues that if our fundamental baseline state is being in the world, then what?
If we are always already practically engaged with a meaningful environment, then the gap between self and world doesn't need to be bridged because it never existed in the first place.
Wow, so the skeptic is asking a pseudo-question based on a completely faulty model of human existence.
You can't ask how a mind reaches the world because the mind is already out there, intertwined with the world.
Okay, so if we aren't isolated minds and we are always practically immersed in the world, what does that world actually look like on a random Tuesday afternoon?
This takes us into Division I of the book, where Heidegger looks at the mundane stuff around us.
He looks at our tools.
And once again, he completely rejects the traditional scientific view of how we interact with objects.
He rejects what philosophers call the layer model.
Right. The traditional view says that when you look at a hammer, your eyes first process raw sense data.
Like a brown cylinder of wood attached to a heavy gray metallic wedge.
Then your brain adds a layer of cognitive value to it, labeling it hammer, and then you deduce how to use it.
Heidegger says that is entirely backward.
Phenomenologically, that's not how we live.
No. When I am trying to hang a picture frame on my wall, I don't see raw physical properties that I have to interpret.
You just see equipment. You see what Heidegger calls Zoe.
I experience its readiness to hand. It's Zuhandenheit.
Exactly. You just grab the hammer and start swinging.
Your focus is entirely on the picture frame, the wall, and the goal of making your room look nice.
The hammer essentially disappears into the activity. It becomes an extension of your body.
You only notice the physical properties of the hammer if something goes wrong.
Blattner uses a fantastic modern example for this.
The coffee mug example.
Yes. Imagine you are typing furiously on your computer keyboard, completely absorbed in writing an email.
You reach over and grab your coffee mug without even looking at it. The mug is ready to hand.
You aren't thinking about it, but suddenly coffee drips onto your keyboard.
The flow is completely broken.
The mug stops being a transparent piece of equipment and suddenly becomes a heavy, annoying ceramic object that you stare at, inspecting it to see if it's cracked.
That breakdown shifts the object from being ready to hand, or Zuhanden.
To what Heidegger calls present at hand, Vorhanden.
It becomes a mere object.
But notice something crucial here. Even when the hammer is working perfectly, it doesn't exist in isolation.
Right. A hammer only makes sense because there are nails.
Nails only make sense because there is wood.
Wood makes sense because there are walls.
Walls make sense because humans need shelter.
It's a massive, interconnected web. Everything points to something else.
Heidegger calls this web of relationships significance.
And this web of significance is what actually makes up the world.
The world isn't a giant physical container full of atoms. It is a tapestry of meanings and purposes.
But the most important feature of this world isn't the tools, is it?
No, it's the other people. The world is profoundly, fundamentally social.
This brings us to one of the most famous and, frankly, most relatable concepts in all of Heidegger's work.
We don't invent the rules for how to use a hammer or how to act in a classroom or how to dress for a funeral.
We inherit them. We do what one does. We wear what one wears.
Heidegger calls this social normativity the anyone, or Das Man.
Das Man is a brilliant and complex concept. Translators wrestle with it.
Das Man is a brilliant and complex concept. Translators wrestle with it, right?
Yeah, sometimes it's the they, sometimes the anyone. It refers to the anonymous ambient pressure of society that dictates the standard ways of behaving, speaking, and understanding the world.
Exactly.
My immediate thought is that Das Man is just peer pressure, like high school cliques telling you what sneakers to wear or societal pressure to get a certain type of job. Is Heidegger just complaining about conformity?
It is much, much deeper than just peer pressure.
How so?
Peer pressure is something you can consciously rebel against. Das Man is the very horizon of intelligibility.
You literally need anyone to be able to function as a human being.
It's the shared social normativity that tells you what a fork is for, how far apart to stand when you are talking to a stranger, or what the concept of a student even means.
You have to be inducted into the practices of the anyone just to navigate reality. It makes shared communication possible.
But Blattner makes sure to point out that while it's necessary, it has a very dangerous dark side.
It can become deeply oppressive without us even noticing.
Heidegger discusses the phenomena of distantiality and subjection.
Because we are embedded in the anyone, we're constantly subconsciously measuring ourselves against the norm.
Are we lagging behind our peers? Are we standing out too much and drawing unwanted attention?
This constant anxious comparison leads to subjection. We surrender our own judgment.
We let the anyone decide for us.
We let public opinion dictate what is considered a successful life, what is considered beautiful, what political opinions are acceptable.
We dissolve our distinct individual selves into the warm, anonymous bath of the crowd.
And this immersion in the crowd dictates how we experience the world emotionally.
Heidegger uses the term disclosedness to describe how the world opens up to us.
And he says it always involves attunement, which we might roughly translate as mood or disposedness.
This goes back to the difference between a human and a computer.
Right, a computer processing data doesn't give a damn about the data.
Yeah.
But we always care. We are always in a mood.
Attunement reveals how things matter to us. We don't just objectively see facts.
If you are in a state of grief or depression, the world literally shows up to you differently.
It shows up as burdensome, gray, and devoid of interesting possibilities.
If you are in a joyful, energetic mood, that same physical environment shows up as vibrant, inviting, and full of opportunities.
You can never step outside of having an attunement. You always have a mood.
And because we are constantly navigating this world of tools, moods, and the heavy expectations of the anyone, it gets exhausting.
And so we experience what Heidegger calls falling. We coast.
We fall into the soothing rhythms of the everyday.
Falling is characterized by idle talk or gereda.
Idle talk is when we repeat what we've heard without truly understanding it or verifying it for ourselves.
Oh, this is perfectly describing the internet age.
Yes, we skim the headline of an article, we don't read the text, and then we confidently repeat the premise at a dinner party.
We retweet the hot take. We engage in massive amounts of communication, but very little actual understanding.
Exactly. And it's important to note that Heidegger isn't acting as a moralist here.
Falling isn't a sin. It's a structural necessity of being a finite creature.
You cannot possibly evaluate the foundational metaphysics of the universe while you are trying to buy groceries or file your taxes.
You have to lean on the prepackaged understandings that anyone provides just to get through the day.
The danger isn't that we fall. The danger is that we forget we've fallen.
We become so completely numb, so deeply absorbed in the idle talk and the routines of the anyone that we forget we are actually free entities whose being is an issue for us.
We start to believe we are just objects drifting along a predetermined current.
So the pivotal question becomes, if we are comfortably numb in the life, anyone coasting on idle talk and everyday routine, what could possibly snap us out of it?
What breaks the spell?
Which brings us to the breakdown of the everyday world. What happens when the machinery stops working?
Heidegger explores this through the profound and terrifying phenomenon of anxiety or angst.
And we need to be incredibly precise here because he is not talking about the kind of anxiety that makes you bite your nails before a job interview.
No, if you are afraid of failing an exam or you're afraid of growling dog on the street, that is fear.
Fear has a specific object. You know exactly what is threatening you, and you can take steps to avoid it.
Anxiety, in Heidegger's strict philosophical sense, has no specific object.
It's objectless.
So what are we anxious about?
We are anxious about being in the world itself.
Wow.
In a state of profound existential anxiety, the entire everyday world, all the tools you rely on, all the roles you play, all the comforting opinions of anyone, suddenly loses its significance.
The web of meaning collapses.
The things that used to motivate you, the job you cared about, the social status you chased, suddenly seem completely, totally pointless. They show up as empty.
It's that terrifying feeling at 3 a.m. when you are staring at the ceiling in the dark and your brain just whispers, why am I doing any of this?
Why does any of this matter?
It's a complete detachment from the script. In anxiety, we realize what Heidegger calls the nullity of our everyday roles.
We realize that the universe didn't hardwire us to be an accountant or a podcaster or a middle manager. It's all constructed.
Exactly. Anxiety reveals that the foundation of our lives is, in a very real sense, groundless.
We are floating over an abyss of freedom.
And this terrifying confrontation with groundlessness brings us face to face with the ultimate horizon of our existence.
What Heidegger calls death.
Okay, another massive term alert. When Heidegger says death, we have to clear away our normal assumptions.
He isn't talking about a biological event.
He isn't talking about the moment an ECG machine goes flat and your heart stops beating.
He calls that biological end demise. What he is interested in is existential death.
Right. Blattner defines existential death carefully. It is the possibility of the absolute impossibility of Dasein.
That is a dense sentence. The possibility of the absolute impossibility.
What does that actually look like experientially?
It means it is the ever-present threat that you might completely lose your ability to understand your own life.
It is the possibility that your connection to the world of meaning could be totally severed.
Existential death is the breakdown of your ability to project yourself into the future.
It's the realization that your existence, your to-be, can simply cease to make sense at any moment.
Now, if I'm listening to this while I'm commuting or walking the dog, I might be thinking, this is incredibly depressing.
Is Heidegger just telling me to be a morbid goth, constantly obsessing over the fact that my life is groundless and I could lose my mind or die at any second?
It sounds bleak at first, but the expert analysis here, and Blattner, emphasizes this heavily frames anxiety and existential death not as depression, but as the ultimate liberation.
Think about the nature of death. Death is your own most possibility.
It belongs exclusively to you.
Because no one can die for me. Someone can pay my taxes if I ask them to. Someone can cover my shift at work.
Someone can even adopt your children if you pass away.
But no one can step in and take my death away from me. It is non-transferable.
Precisely. And because it is non-transferable, the anticipation of death completely individualizes us.
It violently pulls us right out of the comfortable, anonymous blob of the anyone.
When the script of the anyone breaks down in anxiety, and you are forced to face the isolating, unavoidable reality of your own finite existence, you realize that the anyone cannot save you.
The crowd has no answers for your death.
You are delivered over to your own absolute freedom.
You realize that your life is yours and yours alone, and you are entirely responsible for how you choose to live the limited time you have.
Heidegger calls this unified underlying structure of our existence care.
Not care in the sense of affection, but structural care.
We are always ahead of ourselves, projecting our identities into the future.
We are always already in a world thrown into a past we didn't choose.
And we are always amidst entities dealing with the present demands of our environment.
That three-part structure is care.
Okay, so the breakdown has happened. Anxiety and the reality of death have stripped away all our comfortable societal illusions.
We are standing there, philosophically naked, realizing that the anyone can't tell us how to live. So what do we do next?
How do we rebuild? How do we actually construct an authentic identity?
This takes us into Division 2 of the book, where Heidegger introduces concepts like guilt, conscience, and resoluteness.
And true to form, he starts with guilt, which does not mean what we think it means.
Right. If you feel bad because you stole a candy bar or you lied to a friend, that is moral guilt or psychological guilt.
Existential guilt, for Heidegger, is an inescapable structural condition.
He defines existential guilt as being the null basis of a nullity.
I remember reading that phrase in the text and stopping completely.
The null basis of a nullity sounds like a math equation that broke. Let's translate that into English. What does it actually mean to live that?
Let's take the first part, the null basis. This refers to our thrownness.
You and I were thrown into a world we did not choose.
You didn't choose your genetics, you didn't choose your native language, you didn't choose the parents who raised you, and you didn't choose the historical era or the economic conditions you were born into.
That thrownness forms the foundation, the basis of who you are.
But because you didn't create it, because you lack ultimate control over your own starting point, it is a null basis.
You are not the author of your own origin.
Okay, that makes sense. I am playing a hand of cards I didn't deal to myself, so what is the second part? The nullity.
The second nullity comes from your freedom, your choices.
Because you are finite, every time you choose to project yourself into one specific possibility, you must simultaneously reject an infinite number of other possibilities.
If I choose to accept a job in New York, I am simultaneously destroying the possibility of taking the job in Tokyo, or staying home, or going back to grad school.
Every choice I make is haunted by the ghosts of all the unchosen alternatives.
Exactly. So you are a groundless ground. You're thrownness making choices that constantly exclude other choices. Your projection.
You are permeated by limitation.
This means we have what philosophers call situated freedom.
You do not have radical, absolute, magical freedom where you can be anything you want.
You can only choose from the menu of historical possibilities that you were handed.
But if the anyone is just generic, anonymous noise, and I can't trust it to make choices for me, how do I know which item on the menu to pick?
Heidegger says we have to listen to our conscience. But again, we have to strip away our cartoonish assumptions.
Conscience here is not Jiminy Cricket sitting on your shoulder telling you right from wrong.
No. Existential conscience is absolutely not a moral compass dispensing universal Ten Commandment-style rules.
Conscience is a silent call.
It is the call of your own authentic self pulling you back from your lostness in the anyone, calling you to face your own most potential.
It calls us to own our guilt. It calls us to take full responsibility for our situated freedom without making excuses.
It's the capacity to hear the specific, acute demands of a concrete situation, rather than relying on the general, safe, one-size-fits-all rules of society.
And when you actually hear that call and you courageously take ownership of your life, Heidegger calls that state resoluteness.
Resoluteness. Blattner describes it as experiencing a steady steadfastness.
The authentic self stands firm.
And the Reader's Guide provides two incredibly powerful, real-world historical examples to illustrate what resoluteness actually looks like in practice.
The first one involves a famous athlete.
Yes, the basketball legend Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. Before he was Kareem, he was Lou Alcindor.
When he decided to convert to Islam and publicly change his name, he was responding to the deeply personal call of his own conscience.
He took ownership of his identity in a way that radically defied the expectations of anyone.
Which, in his case, was the immense pressure of the American sports media, his fans, and the broader public in the volatile era of the late 1960s and early 1970s.
He didn't do what was safe or expected. He owned his thrownness as a black man in America, and he projected a totally new possibility for his future.
But Blattner makes a really crucial point here. Authentic resoluteness isn't just about making one big dramatic choice and then coasting on it forever.
Abdul-Jabbar had to remain open to taking it back, which doesn't mean regretting it, but it means he continuously had to re-choose and reaffirm his identity in response to new situations every single day.
The second example Blattner uses is even more extreme, and it deals directly with the darkest parts of the history we discussed earlier.
It is the story of Franz Jägerstätter.
Jägerstätter was an Austrian farmer during World War II. When the Nazi regime took over Austria, he was drafted into the military.
But his deep Catholic conscience told him that the regime was fundamentally structurally evil, and he refused to serve.
He refused to swear the oath to Hitler.
And think about the immense crushing weight of anyone in his situation.
His friends, his family, the local mayor, even his local priest, the entire social fabric of his village, told him to just put on the uniform.
They told him to do his duty, to keep his head down, to survive for the sake of his wife and daughters.
The universal rule of the anyone was conformity for survival.
But Jägerstätter refused. He exhibited profound, steady steadfastness.
He heard the demands of his concrete situation, and he owned his choice all the way to his execution. He was beheaded by the state.
But I want to push back on this because it feels like a slippery slope. If Jägerstätter's completely unyielding, if he refuses to listen to his family, his priest, his community, and just blindly follows his internal conviction even unto death, isn't he just being dangerously stubborn?
That is a fair point.
What is the actual difference phenomenologically between authentic Heideggerian steadfastness and just being a rigid, dogmatic fanatic?
That is the exact right question to ask, and it highlights a crucial, nuanced distinction in Heidegger's thought.
Okay, what is the distinction?
Authentic resoluteness absolutely requires remaining open to the situation.
Okay.
A stubborn or dogmatic person holds on to a preconceived rule. Regardless of the reality unfolding in front of them, they are closed off to new information.
But Jägerstätter wasn't blindly following an abstract rule. He was responding to the acute, specific, undeniable reality of the evil of the Nazi regime directly in front of him.
So a fanatic closes their eyes and clings to a rule, whereas the resolute person keeps their eyes wide open and responds to the moment.
Yes, true. Authentic identity isn't rigid persistence through time, like a rock that never changes shape.
Authentic identity is a constant, active, dynamic re-choosing of who you are based on the reality of the current situation.
You have to constantly win your authenticity. You can't just achieve it once, declare yourself authentic, and put it on a shelf.
And to truly understand this idea of constant rechoosing, we have to look at what I consider the massive plot twist of the entire book.
We have to talk about time.
Because Heidegger basically argues that everything we thought we knew about time, how we measure it, how we experience it, is completely derivative and mostly wrong.
This is the climax of the book, where Heidegger attempts to pull the entire massive project together.
He argues that the foundation of care, the foundation of our existence, is temporality.
And he says temporality has 3 ecstasies. Now, these aren't emotional states of euphoria. They are the 3 facets and the 3 directions of our temporal existence.
Future, past, and present. But he redefines all 3 of them.
Right, so usually we think of the future as tomorrow on the calendar or next year.
But Heidegger says the existential future isn't a date, it is purposiveness.
It is our constant projecting into who we are to be.
Our lives are defined by what we are moving toward. If I am studying for a test, my future as a graduate is actively shaping what I am doing right now.
And similarly, the past isn't yesterday or 10 years ago.
He calls the existential past alreadiness or been-ness.
It is our thrownness.
Yeah.
It is the heavy baggage, the language, the trauma, and the context we already bring with us into every single moment.
You don't leave your past behind, you carry your been-ness with you.
And then there is the present. It isn't the current second ticking on the clock.
He calls the existential present and presenting.
It is the act of letting entities encounter us, engaging with the tools, the people, and the environment around us right now, in light of our future purpose and our past baggage.
And this individual temporality stretches out into a broader societal concept he calls historicality.
Dasein doesn't just have a past like a resume of completed events sitting in a drawer.
Dasein is a happening. We take over possibilities from our heritage.
We don't invent our lives out of thin air. We respond to the historical momentum and the cultural inheritance we find ourselves thrown into.
Okay, I have to stop and translate this to my daily life.
Go for it.
If I look at the smartwatch on my wrist and it says exactly 3 p.m., Heidegger is saying that time is, what? Fake? An illusion.
He wouldn't say it's fake. He would say it's derivative. It is a secondary, degraded form of time.
Heidegger makes a sharp distinction between what he calls world time and ordinary time.
Real time is time that is lived, dateable, and significant.
Is time for dinner, time to go to work, time to break up with my partner, or the wrong time to tell a joke?
It is time entirely wrapped up in human meaning and purpose.
So 3 p.m. on my watch is ordinary time.
Exactly. Ordinary time is the clock. It is a leveled off, infinite, flowing container of identical nows.
1 second is exactly the same as the next second.
We invented the clock. We invented ordinary time because as societies grew, we needed to coordinate our individual world times.
If my meaningful time to work and your meaningful time to work need to sync up so we can run a factory together, we have to invent a standardized, objective measure.
But the tragedy is that in doing so, we became mesmerized by the clocks we built.
We forgot that time is actually generated by our caring about the future and the past.
That is the crucial insight. Modern physics, using highly advanced cesium beam atomic clocks, can measure the precise, objective, microscopic now.
But human existence lives the why.
Time isn't a river that we are passively floating in.
Our act of caring about our life, our projecting forward and carrying our past, is the very stretching of time itself.
That is truly mind-bending.
It really is. If you didn't care about anything, if you had absolutely no future projects and no past context, time as we fundamentally experience it would essentially collapse.
And understanding that difference between a machine processing nows and a human living the why brings us perfectly to the final phase of our discussion.
Legacy, reception, and AI. Chapter 6 of Blattner's guide looks at how this incredibly dense 1920s perspective completely reshaped the modern world.
Heidegger's influence on mid-century existentialism and phenomenology was seismic.
He heavily influenced thinkers like Jean-Paul Sartre, Maurice Merleau-Ponty, and Hans-Georg Gadamer.
Though Blattner does note an ironic twist.
Oh, about Sartre.
Yeah, Sartre, who popularized existentialism, actually kind of misinterpreted Heidegger.
Sartre treated a human consciousness, or Dasein, as a more traditional, self-conscious Cartesian ego.
A pure mind defining itself, which is the exact subject-object illusion Heidegger spent his whole book trying to destroy.
But for me, the most fascinating modern application of Heidegger's thought has nothing to do with mid-century French philosophy.
It has to do with Silicon Valley. It's the realm of technology.
Yes. The philosopher Hubert Dreyfus famously used Heideggerian phenomenology to launch a devastating critique against early artificial intelligence research.
How does a book from 1927 critique a computer program?
Dreyfus applied Heidegger's critique of the subject-object model directly to AI.
Early AI researchers assumed that human intelligence was essentially just a brain acting like a computer, processing objective facts, applying rules, and outputting behaviors.
They thought if they could just feed a computer enough rules and facts about the world, it would become intelligent.
Dreyfus looked at Heidegger's concept of being in the world and said, "This will never work."
He summarized it perfectly, quoting his colleague John Hogland, "The problem with artificial intelligence is that computers don't give a damn."
That hits so incredibly hard today. Think about modern generative AI, the large language models we interact with constantly.
It can mimic human language with terrifying perfection. It can generate essays, write poetry, code software.
But functionally, it is the ultimate engine of what Heidegger called idle talk.
It just statistically repeats and recombines public information without any genuine underlying understanding of what the words mean.
Because the AI has no world.
Yeah.
It doesn't care about its own being. Its being is not an issue for it.
It has no thrownness, it feels no anxiety, it has absolutely no fear of existential death, and it projects no authentic future for itself.
It simply processes a sequence of objective now times. An AI can't be resolute because it has absolutely nothing at stake. It can't die.
Exactly. True intelligence, in the Heideggerian sense, isn't about data processing. It requires vulnerability, finitude, and care.
You understand what a hammer is, not because you have a Wikipedia database of its physical properties uploaded into your memory.
But because you have a physical body, you have a project you care about building, and you have a desperately limited amount of time on this earth to achieve it.
Finitude is the engine of meaning.
Wow. Okay, let's try to bring all of this massive architecture together. We have covered an incredible amount of ground today.
We started by dismantling the VR headset, the illusion of the isolated mind, showing how we are fundamentally being in the world.
Practically immersed in the everyday tools around us and heavily subjected to the social gravity of the anyone.
Then we explored how the jarring, objectless experience of anxiety and the sobering realization of our own inevitable existential death violently strip away that social conformity.
That breakdown isolates us just enough so we can actually hear the silent call of our own conscience.
And through resoluteness, we answer that call.
We take ownership of our thrownness, our existential guilt, and we realize that our essence isn't a static, unchangeable soul trapped in a body.
We are the dynamic, active stretching of temporality. We are constantly reaching into our future while carrying the weight of our past.
It is a philosophy that demands absolute accountability for your own existence.
Which brings me to a final thought for you, the listener.
Think about our intense modern obsession with productivity hacks.
Think about the smartwatches tracking our heart rates, the calendar apps, the constant drive to optimize every single minute of the day.
We are obsessed with mastering clock time.
But through a Heideggerian lens, we have to ask a terrifying question. By trying to perfectly manage every objective, now, are we actually committing the ultimate act of falling?
Are we using productivity as a high-tech shield to hide from our true, finite, messy, existential temporality?
If you optimized every single second of your day perfectly, without ever feeling a moment of anxiety, would you actually be living authentically?
Or would you have just successfully turned yourself into the perfect, numb, unthinking gear in the machinery of the anyone?
It's the ultimate distraction. We busy ourselves with the how so we never have to face the anxiety of the why.
It demands that we step out of the comforting machinery of routine, feel the terrifying but liberating weight of our own finitude, and decide for ourselves what truly matters.
Something to mull over the next time you look at your watch.